plant growth within ponds is really good for it. It provides habitat for the fish and food. It provides stuff for the ducks and different birds. And it also helps keep the water clear and really take up those excess nutrients that are usually in the water. But too much plant growth can also not be a good thing. So usually you see issues with plant growths in two different areas. So you have your invasive species, and then you have your native species, or ones that are supposed to be or have been here throughout the past. And so invasive species tend to take over a little quicker than more your native species. And to deal with those, you definitely want to take a more aggressive approach. So to deal with the invasive species that we have within our ponds, the main one we deal with here is curly-leaf pondweed. And essentially we treat that with herbicide. It's really the best way to manage it that we've found. Now the native species are a little different because, like I said, some plants are good to have, a certain amount of them, but sometimes they can be a little detrimental. So as you can see here behind me, it's Thomas Mitchell Pond, and we deal a lot with excess plant growth. So this is an instance where a native plant, pondweed is what's behind me, is too much. So too much of a good thing, I guess you could say. Anglers, so fishermen, really can't get in here and fish, and that's really what we like to see. People like to get out and fish, of course, and take their kids out, and it's really difficult to fish through this. So that's a concern that we have when we have too much plant growth. The other concern is in the fall, plants actually die back naturally. When plants start dying back, they consume oxygen as they're decomposing, and that can lead to the oxygen to really drop within the pond itself and can actually potentially cause a fish kill. So in order to manage this excess plant growth within our ponds, we do use herbicide right now, and we do not treat the whole pond. So we only treat about a third of the pond surface, 15% or so, and we do that because even when you treat pond plants, they die off, of course. So they again suck that oxygen out of the water column, and if you would treat the whole pond at once, you could potentially lead to a fish kill. So that's how we manage it right now. There's some other ways to manage it that we're looking to explore, potentially manually pulling the pond plants out with rakes. That's really a good technique on a small scale. Here at Thomas Mitchell, we have such a large problem with aquatic plant growth that may not be conducive. One other thing that you can do, and this goes back to pond design that we heard about earlier in the workshop, is really proper pond design from the start can really help alleviate some of these future plant growth concerns. So Thomas Mitchell here was dredged a while ago, but unfortunately it wasn't dredged enough, or it wasn't dredged all the way to the banks enough. And so when you have too shallow of slopes along your banks, sunlight can reach the bottom and really proliferate that plant growth. If you can have a little more steeper slopes, at least in most areas of your pond, you can really curb that plant growth before it even happens. So really important thing to think about as you're designing your pond, or even going back and doing it later on. Dredging is something we've talked about out here, doing again along the shoreline. But one thing that you struggle with when you do dredging is it's very expensive. One of the reasons it is very expensive is because you have a lot of material you pull out that then you have to do something with. So one of the things we did at one of our other areas is we actually used the spoil material, or the dredged material, to build what we call jetties. So essentially they kind of come out, little fishing piers that come out into the pond itself, and then it provides access for people to go out and fish on. So a really kind of way you can do dredging, but maybe make it a little less expensive and get some really good amenities out of your pond.